important guest from London today. This is Jilliana Ranicar, or Sultan Jilliana. But we are privileged and happy to have you here. Welcome, bienvenue.
Thank you very much, everybody. I'm Jilliana Ranicar-Breese, and I'm from England.
Yes, and we would like to know, first of all, how did you meet Shmuel Tatz, and how it happens that you came to this house?
Well, it's quite a long story. There are two stories, actually. First of all, it happened in connection, believe it or not, with the Salvation Army. I live in Brighton, in England, and at the bottom of my road is the Salvation Army. And they had a little poster on the wall, and I used to pass it every day, and it said, retro something, Lithuania. And I'd always wanted to go to Vilnius for some reason. And this was going to be an afternoon of Lithuanian dancers and people singing. Oh, very unusual in Brighton. You never meet Lithuanians. So anyway, I made a note. And on a particular Sunday, I went, and people were dancing at the Salvation Army. And I thought to myself, that's a good opportunity to meet Lithuanians. So it only went on for about an hour, and then everybody left, you know, the Salvation Army got their money, donations, and I thought, no, I want to meet these people. So I went up to the MC and said, I want to meet the Lithuanian people, and he said, oh no, they don't speak English. So I said, well, there's got to be somebody who speaks English. So he pointed to a man at the back, and he said, that man speaks English. He brought them over. So I went over and introduced myself. And it was he's an impresario, I gather quite well known, in Vilnius, called Gintaris, except I can't remember his surname. And he brings over foreign entertainment to Lithuania, classical musicians and tango dancers and so on. And as I lived in the same road, I said, well, would you like to come back for a cup of tea? And he was a bit shocked, but he agreed. And he had half an hour before the coach was taking everybody back. So I seduced him to come for a cup of tea in an English home. And he was very impressed, and he said, you must come to Lithuania next year. And that's how I got there. He invited me, and...
Jilliana, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
That's how I got there.
The question was, how did you meet Shmuel Tatz?
Well, I'm coming to that. I was introduced to his friend, and he had another friend who happened to be a friend of Shmuel. And we met over dinner, and he gave me his card. He spoke about Soutine and so on, and said, I wanted to interview him, but there was no time because he'd gone back to New York. And he said, when are you coming to New York? Well, at that time I had no plans.
At that time, did you know about Soutine?
Oh, yes.
And
yes.
You were impressed by the fact that you found collector of...
Well, I looked it up on the website, and I saw a video, so I knew that he gave salons. And then, but I also give salons. I give poetry, and I am the author of Jilliana's vignettes. So vignettes are stories, episodes in my life. And I invite poets and writers to my salon, which is
we are going
once
back
a
to
month.
this later a little bit, but can you tell us, how did you arrive to these ideas, when you started to write, and what was a moment of awakening? What brought you to this?
What, to writing?
To writing.
To writing. Well, I was on a Greek island in 1998 in Skiros. And in fact, it was the island where the British poet Rupert Brooke died. And I happened to be in a holistic centre, personal development centre, and I did a taster. There was a well-known writer, British writer there, and she gave a taster. And we all sat on the floor, about 20 of us, and we had a blank piece of paper, and she said, I want everybody to write about yourself or a member of your family as an outsider. And she said, you've got 5 minutes starting now. And she clapped her hands, and I've never stopped writing since.
Well, that's a wonderful story. But would you say that this may inspire some people who are here? They may be also.
Everybody can write.
If I clap,
yes, yes.
You may write.
Everybody can write. For me, writing is also therapy. It's also healing. It's an expression. Words are powerful. Even if you have a problem, you should write about it. Even if you don't share it with anyone, then you get it off your chest.
So we are going to hear some poems today. But let me just interrupt you for a moment. I want just to remind that we have a very large program. We have musicians here who are going to perform.
So he's timing me.
So we have to time a little bit, and it's very interesting to talk to you, and we have to hear your poems. But let me ask you, I know you well traveled. Also, I want to know, because there are people from Lithuania, a lot of people, we would like to know you as an American.
I'm English.
English poet. What was your impression by visiting Vilnius? What was it?
Well, I was invited for 2 weeks. I stayed in a beautiful hotel called Shakespeare. In fact, Lima was staying in the same hotel, so she can verify that. A bit of synchronicity, because each room was named after a writer. Could have been Voltaire, it could have been Thomas Hardy, it could have been Dickens. But it happened to be Thomas Hardy, the room that I was given. And in actual fact, back in Brighton, I lived in a house, a Georgian house, which a publisher had owned in the Georgian period. And his guests, in fact, it was a historic house, his guests were Dickens and Hardy. So that was, for me, synchronicity.
How Lithuania is different from other countries you visited? What was your...
Well, I had lots of classical music in churches. It's very Catholic. I happen to be Jewish, but it's a very, very Catholic country. I like the idea of wandering into a church and hearing beautiful music, classical music, of course. The weather was beautiful. I was there, I can't remember what time of the year, June I think it was. And the food was very good. I enjoyed the food.
Going back to Tatz, you meet him on the street or at Shakespeare?
No, we were having dinner.
You had a dinner with?
Not one-to-one, there was a group of us, yes. A very good restaurant too. It was Deco something.
Okay. Do you have any poems related to Vilnius?
No.
No. Okay, you used to live in Paris also, and you met very famous Russian painter, so it is appropriate to mention him, yes.
That is a story which I can read. I can start with that story if you like, and then go on to the poems, okay.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I went to live in Paris around 1977, I believe, and I didn't know anyone. Well, I knew one journalist, but that was it. This story is, everything I write is true, by the way. And this is called Tutus in Paris. Tutus, you know what tutus are, yeah? The ballerinas. Okay, so here goes. I came to live in Paris without social connections when I was about 30 in 1977. After having lived 6 months in Mexico, I quickly realized that walking into an art gallery opening, vernissage in French, in Saint-Germain, the art district on the left bank, around 7 o'clock, was the best place to meet interesting people. One Wednesday evening, I picked a known Russian artist's vernissage, dressed up, a little nervous, as I knew no one in the capital of culture, Paris, the city of lights. I knew very little about the Parisian art world, but loved the Impressionists and the Fauves. Michael Chamiakin was a professional artist de rigueur. The gallery was packed with branché guests, so one could hardly view his paintings on the wall. It was a place just to be seen and not heard. Tired and alone in a crowd of posh people, I sat down on a... Are you timing me? I sat down on a sofa next to a distinguished, much older-looking gentleman who was looking bored and detached. "What do you think of the paintings?" I asked. He glanced at me sideways and uninterested until he heard my obvious English accent. Speaking English, he suddenly perked up, explaining he had lived many years in London in the 50s as Baron's photographic assistant. Excited to be speaking English again, he rose and took me, gauche, half his age, Jilliana, in hand, introducing me to his Russian friend, the artist that tout Paris was talking about. He proudly introduced himself as Zhenya from Moscow, a Russian émigré. Never had I met one before, nor for that matter since. He confided in me that I confided in him I had just arrived in Paris and was living in the Rue Campagne Première in Montparnasse. I was thus informed that Modigliani had committed suicide by throwing himself out of his studio window. Zhenya, of course, was knowledgeable in the arts. Being my protector for the evening, and as it was early, he suggested a surprise dinner, and we should pay a visit to his friend, the German fashion photographer Willy Mewald, at his studio in the Rue de la Grande Chaumière, who had salons on Wednesdays and Saturdays. He went to make a phone call if the salon was on, asking the person who answered if it was on. "Mais oui," was the reply. So off we went into the night, and hold on, I'm trying to skip because of the time. We arrived at Willy's studio, hidden at the end of a secret garden, tucked away in a street famous for its art school, around the corner from the famous Select Brasserie, which was to become my second home. Zhenya opened the unlocked door, and we entered an exciting private world. There was elderly, distinguished Willy on his couch in an original artist's atelier with a high glass roof, his black and white portraits of famous artists such as Chagall, Picasso and Braque adorning the walls, surrounded by Spanish transvestites wearing shocking pink tutus. Well, not all of them. Some had long evening dresses in garish colours, others dressed in bling and little else, wearing wigs and very heavy makeup. Everyone was laughing and speaking Spanish very loudly, so I joined in. The outrageous party guests were all shapes and sizes and looked fabulous, having fun. And Zhenya and I realized we had gate-crashed a private birthday party for a cabaret singer. Willy rose to greet me in English with a heavy, guttural German accent, which I can't do. "Zhenya, you've come on the wrong night. Bring Jilliana on a Saturday night. I think she would prefer it." He nodded and smiled at me knowingly, a charming man who was later to be rediscovered at the end of his long life as a recognized, talented black and white portrait and fashion photographer. We left, and Zhenya accompanied me to my nearby abode. However, he hovered at the street door, waiting to be invited in for who knows what, saying that he was lonely and looking for a relationship. I thanked him for the evening and agreed to meet for the Saturday salon, but made certain he understood there would be no relationship. Willy Mewald, the fashion photographer of Dior's New Look, was the catalyst for my new life in Paris, and although he never knew how his Saturday salon would educate and give me the self-confidence I lacked, leading me to find my new identity.
Okay.
Thank you.
It's a very interesting story, but it is a story, it is not a poem.
I didn't say it was.
Okay.
I said it was
We
a
were
vignette.
expecting to hear poem, but
Well, now
okay.
I'm going to do the
That's a
poem.
very nice story. I just want to mention that Shemyakin, this is for some people who are not familiar, it is a very famous Russian painter who immigrated to the West. He was actually considered to be mentally sick patient, and then he moved to Paris where he was exhibiting, and then with the help of Minister of Culture he was promoted, and he is one of the most significant painters, together with a poet, with a Russian poet, laureate, Nobel Prize winner. They both were accused that they are not mentally 100% okay, and they were sent out, but they became very famous. And the other name, Baron, he was a photographer for
the royal family and for aristocrats.
So you were in a very
he was very famous.
Right, very good company. But again,
the rest of poems.
Shmuel Tatz, you know, what, how this developed, that you came here, he invited you.
No, it's more synchronicity.
Synchronicity.
I happen
explain to people what is synchronicity.
Extraordinary coincidence. I was coming to New York with someone, and I had been invited to the Kerouac, Jack Kerouac. Everybody heard of Jack Kerouac?
Yeah.
On the road? Well, I actually came originally to America, to Lowell, Massachusetts. That's my reason. It wasn't to New York, it was for Lowell. And I jammed with David Amram, who is a well-known classical musician and jazz musician, and I read at the festival. They have an annual festival, and an annual festival for his death. It was 50 years since he died. That's Jack Kerouac, I mean. And then I was due to come here for 4 nights, and so I thought, well, I knew that Shmuel gave salons, so I thought, wouldn't that be good if he allowed me to give a poetry salon at his place, and I gave him 2 dates, Saturday the 26th or Sunday the 27th. And to my amazement, he wrote back and he said, well, Sunday the 27th. I didn't know that he had done for the last 10 years a salon connected with Paganini. I had no idea.
Okay.
So that's the link.
Bienvenue. Nous sommes très heureux que vous êtes ici, que vous pouvez donner tout ce que vous savez et tout ce que vous voulez.
Bon, vous voulez que je lise quelques poèmes?
Bien sûr.
Okay. So, here we go. Some of them, well, they're mainly very short. And it's a potpourri. I have to explain one thing. I have and had a fear of fire. Always have done all my life. I nearly set fire to my flat, that remained with me. This poem, which is 54 seconds, well, I know he's very minute. Feel the fear and do it anyway. Smouldering tongues of fire, hot embers to be conquered. Haysel exhibition grounds, Brussels. I must not fail. Prove my courage, no limits, no boundaries. Prove my inner strength. Anxious? Behind 3 Hasidics on the eve of the Sabbath, waiting like Moses, the parting of the waters. If they can do it, so can I, says my inner voice. A strength comes over me. I can. As if on autopilot, marching forward with purpose, I look back, seeing glowing pathway, ecstatic, joy, praise, being hugged and cheered, That's it, says I, through my tears. I did a fire walk. I walked on hot coals. That's what that is about. Now this one, which is 2 minutes.
Don't be too over-conscious about the time.
Okay,
You still have,
okay.
so relax and do it.
Okay, thank you. Right, this one came out of a masterclass in England, and the facilitator just gave one word. She said gift. So that could have been many, many things. And this is what I wrote. Gift. I received the gift of honesty from my parents, but no inspiration, no demonstrative love, no demonstrative affection. I received the gift of silence from my absent father, of secrecy from my mother. Now, my life is an open book, full of stories and synchronicity I call vignettes. I received the gift of negativity from my inhibited mother. A leopard can never change its spots, she would say. It can, and it did. I learned to be positive. My mother gave me a life-changing gift. She opened the door to Italy. I entered. Outside the conventional Liverpool box. I should say that I'm a Liverpudlian. Study in Perugia, she suggested. I did. Her dream was never fulfilled. Mine was. Her gift changed my life forever. My parents' gift was not with words of love, but of material deeds and possessions. I loved my ugly bomb city. I was proud to be a liver bird, a gauche Liverpudlian, but without the recognisable Scouse accent. My parents gave me the gift of financial support until I was free to stand alone. Alone abroad, confident, I met myself. No mentor, no guardian, no advisor, alone. I learned through my errors. New surroundings, new languages, new cultures, the art of travel, the art of conversation. Brazil, Mexico, London, Paris, Havana, I should say Vilnius. A new name, a new identity, a new career, new independence, discovery of moi-même, Jilliana, Ranicar-Breese. My parents never told me they were proud of me. They never understood my wanderlust. They never understood my work. They never understood who I had become. Now they are long gone, never to know my achievements, my successes, my long marriage, my creativity, my friends, my extended family who love and understand me. Now I am the mentor. I am the educator. I am the parent. Now, in my twilight years, I pass my gift on to inspire others and be understood and recognized. Yes?
Do you want to continue, or I have the question. 5 minutes, he said, but I was fascinated by the fact that you call yourself sometimes Sultana Jilliana. Now, can you tell us what does it mean, Sultana, and very shortly?
Well, you probably noticed I wear a turban.
Yeah.
The turban started many, many years ago, in fact, with an Israeli headdress that my oldest best friend gave me because she lives in Jerusalem. So, and I'd always worn hats and berets. So I was wearing at one stage Israeli headdresses, and then when I went to Turkey, I became very interested in turbans because it's kind of like a 30s look, a 40s look, a bit like Gloria Swanson in Sunset Boulevard. And so I started buying turbans, in fact, they're Muslim, for the modern Muslim lady. And I called myself, I'm very often called the Queen in different languages, and I assumed that as a sultan is kind of like the king, or they don't in Turkey actually have a king, as you know, they have a president, a very controversial president. I assumed, incorrectly, I now know, that a sultana would be the queen of the sultan. And it's only years later, because in Turkey everybody calls me sultana, but I've only just discovered that in fact a female queen is called a sultan, which I don't think is right. But so the word sultana doesn't exist. I'm the only sultana.
So we are very happy to hear.
One last thing is, in India, the word for a queen is Rani. And my name happens to be Ranicar, or Ranicar. And so when I've been in India, they say, what's your name? And I say, Rani. And they look at me like, oh? And I say, well, I'm half a Rani, because Rani car.
So you're queen of a car. Okay. Queen of a car. Okay. I was given signals in 5 minutes to finish, but we cannot, we should use this 5 minutes for a new poem. So
yes,
it's your choice.
Oh my God.
Yes.
Do you want a Sufi one?
Yes,
or
because we have a very big
Paris?
program. We have
Lee
Lolis, who is going to perform today.
Okay, all right.
Cheers.
Okay,
We have a classical musician.
Okay,
right?
I'll read a Sufi-inspired poem. Okay?
Okay.
Sufi-inspired, which came out of a Sufi workshop. It's called The Spirit of All Sounds. I am moved by the sound of the sea, the tides moving in and out of the shoreline, waves crashing against rocks, the sound of seagulls, the sound of water, a running, gurgling stream, the movement of water over rocks, crashing cascades, the roar of Iguazu, witnessed from both sides decades ago, Brazil and Argentina, now a fond memory. I am moved by the sound of birds, tweeting or warbling in a garden, in a park, in an aviary, out of sight, high up on trees. I love to watch tropical, brightly coloured birds attracting attention, strutting, calling, mating, birdsong, more fond memories of exotic locations in my past. I am moved by the sound of rhythm, syncopation, drumming, Brazil, the batucada of Salvador de Bahia, gypsy, Andalusian hand-clapping in synchronized, precise timing with North African overtones. The blending of musical fusion, the blending of world cultures. I am moved by exotic world music. I am moved to tears by a young Dutch angel hitting the high notes in an aria, the three tenors, a melodic violin concerto, a romantic piano concerto, memories of my childhood. The beat of the bossa nova, the plaintive sound of Piazzolla's new tango, the romantic Cuban feeling bolero, the wail of the passionate gypsies. I cannot imagine complete silence. It must be torture. Solitary confinement, without sound, without touch, torture.
Thank you very much. Jilliana, very impressed. Thank you very much. Je vous souhaite beaucoup de chance.
Okay, you're going to analyze all that,
Oh,
right? And
yes,
send
yes.
me the full report.
Yeah, I just want to wish you a lot of creativity and health.
Thank you.
And I hope that next year you'll repeat this and you'll come from England and you'll give us share more poems and vignettes
Thank you.
of your creations. Okay,
Okay.
thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
And now,
Enjoy the rest of the
yes,
evening.
thank you very much.
One play, 1 second, one play.